Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends, fellow human beings, powerful advocates and allies. This is a 3-year journey. We've made great progress, but at times like this it feels like we've made little progress, really. How do we address the challenges? Please. Thanks. How do we get things done? Now, I'm not going to, we have the Advisory Council meeting at 7 o'clock this evening and until tomorrow to begin this challenging task of setting priorities for the Centre for the first 2 years. We have a new CEO, Mary. We have some of the funding in, and I would like to thank everybody in the audience who've given funding to the Centre's first 2 years. But I just want to say one thing. We're not going to wait. We can't afford to wait now that we have everything in place. And I think the thing that we can't wait for any longer, even if we thought we were going to wait for this, is the question of legitimacy. I often get asked, what is IHRB? Who are you? You're not an intergovernmental organisation. What is this Centre for Sport and Human Rights? Where does its legitimacy come from? Asked a lot, actually, over the past 5 or 6 years. The legitimacy for what we do does not come from big, powerful organisations. We need big, powerful organisations. We need their support, we need their capacity, we need their leverage. But the legitimacy for what we do comes from you. Everybody in this room, those of you who take risks on a daily basis and who have suffered and continue to suffer for human rights. The legitimacy for a human rights organisation comes from those most affected and from human rights defenders. We do not need the permission of anybody to create this centre other than your permission. Your permission is the permission we need, and for Mary Harvey and the team, your continued permission gives the legitimacy to build this centre. That's who we are. If we don't listen to you, we've failed. But we have to listen to all of you. There's a diversity of opinions in this room. Some of you, I think, deserve the right to reply on many of the things, including the last panel. If we have time, please raise your hands and do so. I'm sorry that we don't have more time, but maybe this evening and tomorrow the Advisory Council members can reflect and respond. Speaking truth to power is what we must do, and the centre itself will only have limited power, but the power will come from its relationships with others that have a lot more power, and encouraging you to use your power for the sake of human rights. And I guess the bigger task is those who are not in the room today. As Brent says, we need the media, we need the many millions and powerful entities who don't want to hear this conversation, who are not with us now. We need to get them in the room. We need them to use their power. Now, I've also been reminded from colleagues that the right to strike is a human right. And you might have heard news about disruption to rail and flights. The European Convention on Human Rights has reiterated the right to strike as a key human right. We respect that. We're not hoping that there will be limited disruption to trains and flights tonight and tomorrow. Conflicting news, but it doesn't seem too bad at the moment. So for those who are staying tonight and tomorrow, thank you for staying during disrupted travel times. Mary Robinson, the floor will be yours shortly. I'm going to leave you to last, actually, because you're going to challenge us around the way ahead. But to thank you again for your leadership. The term Dream Team has been mentioned a few times this afternoon. We have a dream team in this room. It's not an Olympic sport, although sometimes it feels like it. William, Hayley, Alison, Guido, Scott, Francesca, Kia, Daniela, Mario, thank you for all the work you've done. To my trustees and to the committee members for the centre, and to Ron Popper in particular, who represents our trustees on the Centre's interim board. So I'll say no more, I've said enough. We're going to, Niels, I think I'm going to give you the floor first, if that's okay. Where is he? You're there. Your reflections on the past 2 days and anything that you think has not been said that should have been said, or priorities that we need to listen to. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, I would like to thank all of you and for the Center for Human Rights and Sport for inviting me and taking part of this panel as a youth representative. I'm representing the European Sport NGO. We are working with all European Olympic committees on grassroots sport. First of all, I would like to start with something that Mary said this morning at the opening. Sport is about young people. I think we really need young people in the debate. We've been talking about different topics. We've been talking about different issues, different realities. We are coming from different backgrounds, different cultures, but we are all unified here to use sport as a tool. I would like to mention 3 different things. First of all is the importance of partnership and coordination, the goal 17. If we are here today, is to work on human rights, is to work all together on this issue, bringing our knowledge, bringing our power all together to do something. That's the first thing. We are working on human rights all together. But what about climate change? What about sport and development and peace? It's 2 really important topics. Yesterday, the IOC announced that they're going to start working on climate change in Katowice for the COP24. It's something. We are all working on human rights, but we'll all have the power to work on climate change. We all have the power to work on sport, development, and peace. After the closure of the UNSDP in 2017, this center has been created, but it's still time to work on many other issues. That's the first thing. The second one, I would like to talk about leverage. We've been discussing about mega sport events, about athletes, about medias. We know what is the power of sport. We know how we can use sport. We are all aware about what we are able to do in the future, but also in the present. We are all taking action, but is it enough? As a young representative, as a young person, I feel that we need to achieve much more. It's good to start something. We already did something by this forum. You already did something with the conference in Geneva. But we need to use Tokyo 2020. We need to use the World Cup in Qatar. We need to use the female World Cup in France in 2019. Third thing, and maybe the most important for me, the youth participation. Today, Maggie was mentioning the diversity of this room. Mrs. Robinson as well. Who is represented in this room? Where are the other persons? What is the power that we are giving to them to make this change, to get this knowledge? I would like to mention the Kazan Action Plan. The Kazan Action Plan, it's written that it aims to foster the inclusion of youth in decision-making process. How many youth are in this room? Yesterday, my colleague Viet was having the chance to take part of the panel. That's already something. We need more. We need more youth. We've been talking about youth issues during these 2 days. But how can you represent youth issues without inviting youth, without involving youth? We cannot solve issues of youth and children without asking them about what they are doing, what they are facing. And we really need to do that. I would like to thank you, Khaleda and Shabnam, as well, for the testimony. That's something. It means something. And as you mentioned, by having this conversation in this room, it's totally different. We are bringing something new. We are bringing feelings. We are bringing real stories. We need it. I would like to talk about 2 other things that are the most important for me. It's empowerment. We haven't been talking about empowerment that much. By giving the power, or at least the chance to share opinions to youth and children, we're going to help them to get educated. What does it mean to be educated? They're going to have another opinion about gender. They're going to have another opinion about climate change. They're going to have a better health. every issue that we are discussing today about every topic. It can be corruption as well. By having this education, all the issues that we are discussing, we won't have it, or not in the same level at least. So we need this education, and by educating people and by educating them is also involving them in the decision process. It's involving them in this kind of meetings. I think it's crucial. It's crucial for our future. I would like to mention the UN resolution that's been published about sustainability, the role of sport for sustainability. You've certainly heard about this Youth 2030 strategy as well. Youth is not mentioned in this UN resolution. How can we explain it? Do you think that it's normal? Do you think that it makes sense? How can we achieve all those issues, all those goals, without asking youth? And I would like to finish by asking the Center for Sport and Human Rights about two things. First one is, you have this advisory meeting today at 7, as far as I understand. Okay. The first thing is that there will certainly be another sporting chance forum next year. What about having a panel with youth? What about involving youth? I'm part of an organization, this European Sport NGO. We are currently working on a project of using sport to achieve SDGs. We want to apply for an Erasmus Plus grant. We want to go in Tokyo. We want to work with Senegal for the Youth Olympic Games, and maybe in Paris 2024. It's a long-term project. We need it. I call every one of you that could be interested to work on this to contact us, ENGSO Youth. We need to work on this. And by working on this, we can engage in forums and conferences. And my last request is, what about having a youth in the advisory board? What about having a youth that can talk to others in this advisory board? We have public, private sector. What about youth? That's my last request. Thank you, everyone.
I know Mary Robinson well enough to know that she will be delighted by everything you just said. Thank you, sir. Really, very well said. Next up is His Excellency Ambassador Martin Michelet, who's the Swiss ambassador to UNESCO. The Swiss government has been court a mission the past 3 years, from our first meeting in Glion, around the lake, to now offering to house the Centre for Sport and Human Rights in Geneva with your support. So I'd like to acknowledge the support of colleagues here from the Swiss government. And sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, John. You give me the perfect start for my remarks. And if you allow me, we are at UNESCO, we are in Paris, and next door they are discussing about cultural diversity. So I'm going to speak in French. En français. Donc, j'interviens ici comme représentant du gouvernement suisse. Et peut-être la première remarque que je voulais faire ce soir, c'est souligner le chemin déjà parcouru. Tu as mentionné Glion, tu as mentionné les efforts, et je crois que la salle, le débat qu'on a eu ces 2 jours montre tout le chemin qui a été fait. Évidemment, on a eu, et notamment le dernier panel, montre tout ce qui reste à faire. Mais j'aimerais souligner tout ce qui a été fait, et en particulier exprimer la vive satisfaction du gouvernement suisse par rapport au lancement du centre à Genève au mois de juin. C'est une grande satisfaction. Nous sommes convaincus que le centre se trouve dans le biotope idéal. Comme vous savez, la Suisse abrite une 50aine d'organisations internationales, une 70aine de fédérations sportives. Donc je peux vous assurer que la Suisse va continuer à s'engager pour promouvoir l'adhésion au principe, pour mettre les droits de l'homme au cœur de la discussion sur le sport et sur les grands événements sportifs. Cet engagement s'inscrit dans la droite ligne de la politique suisse des droits de l'homme, et notamment l'engagement à mettre en œuvre les principes directeurs des Nations Unies sur les entreprises et les droits de l'homme. Donc peut-être la deuxième remarque que j'aimerais faire, elle a trait non plus au chemin qui a été parcouru, mais à l'endroit où nous nous trouvons, donc de Glion à Paris, et même plus précisément dans la maison de l'UNESCO, une maison de la paix, et il vient d'être rappelé, c'est une maison qui a inscrit au fronton et dans son acte constitutif le principe de la paix et le fait que les guerres prennent naissance dans l'esprit des hommes et que c'est dans l'esprit des hommes que doivent être édifiées les défenses de la paix. Il est donc évident que, par son mandat, l'UNESCO est source d'impulsion et un avocat pour la cause que nous défendons ici. C'est une enceinte intergouvernementale qui doit être à la fois une cible et un vecteur pour notre action. Comme vous le savez, l'UNESCO, c'est l'organisation internationale spécialisée dans le domaine de l'éducation, c'est l'organisation qui a la charge de suivre dans les SDG, dans les ODD, en particulier le numéro 4 qui a trait à l'éducation, et comme ça a été souligné par M. Taylor dans le panel précédent, l'importance de l'éducation, notamment pour tout ce qui a trait à la non-discrimination. Cela m'amène à ma troisième remarque, et je me dirige vers les activités futures du centre, et ça trait à la question de la participation géographique. Je n'ai pas assisté à tous les panels au cours de ces 2 jours, mais j'ai entendu plusieurs fois cet élément souligné, la nécessité d'élargir encore la coalition. Je suis très impressionné de voir tous les intervenants qui sont dans cette salle, mais il y a encore un effort à faire. Je travaille dans le domaine multilatéral et je peux vous dire, vous le savez, mais même les meilleures idées ont de la peine à avancer, elles ont de la peine à s'envoler et à prendre leur envol si elles ne sont pas largement portées. Et je crois qu'il est vraiment nécessaire d'élargir aussi géographiquement notre travail en approchant encore plus largement des gouvernements, notamment dans le Sud. Et je peux vous assurer aussi que la Suisse va continuer à soutenir et à accompagner ces efforts, notamment en soutenant le centre pour diffuser plus encore et pour élargir cette coalition. Il en va naturellement de la légitimité de tout ce que nous faisons, mais aussi et surtout de la nécessité d'écouter les voix et les besoins des personnes qui sont touchées par les impacts négatifs associés à des événements sportifs. C'est donc extrêmement important. Et peut-être ma dernière remarque, c'est de nouveau, je jette un regard légèrement extérieur par rapport aux travaux dans le domaine du sport, vu que je suis le délégué auprès de l'UNESCO, mais ce qui me frappe, c'est vraiment l'ampleur de la tâche. Le domaine qui est couvert est extrêmement large. On a parlé au cours de ces 2 jours de corruption, de discrimination, d'éducation, de housing, d'environnement, etc. Donc un éventail extrêmement large qui montre à la fois l'immensité des besoins, et je crois que ça va constituer un défi important pour le centre, à la fois de répondre à des attentes qui sont énormes avec des moyens forcément limités. Donc il faudra à la fois se mettre à disposition de tous les acteurs pour identifier les défis les plus pertinents, partager les meilleures pratiques, mais en même temps, disons, même si je sais que le centre est dans des mains excellentes, ces personnes n'ont pas des super pouvoirs et il faudra bien prioriser, focaliser et puis renforcer les alliances avec tous les partenaires. J'ai mentionné l'UNESCO tout à l'heure, bien sûr, mais aussi d'autres organisations. Je suis aussi le représentant auprès de l'Organisation internationale de la francophonie, une organisation qui est basée ici à Paris et dont la majorité des membres se trouvent en Afrique. Ce sont des pays francophones. On doit vraiment aussi travailler avec ces gens et travailler avec ces partenaires. On est ici dans la maison de l'UNESCO. J'ai souligné l'importance de ces alliances et de ces liens. Le seul petit regret, c'est, et je crois que ça a été évoqué par un intervenant tout à l'heure, le monsieur en face de moi, la nécessité que les témoignages de Mme Galef, de Mme Bobares, de Mme Rodriguez, etc., de M. Taylor, soient entendus en dehors de cette salle, soient entendus à l'UNESCO. Et peut-être un petit regret, c'est on est ici dans cette maison, c'est symboliquement extrêmement fort, mais j'aimerais voir plus de gens de l'UNESCO, plus de gens de l'extérieur, et je crois que là, il y a encore un travail important à faire et qui sera important pour le centre de créer ces alliances avec tous les partenaires. Voilà, je m'en vais terminer ici et je vous remercie de m'avoir fait une place sur ce panel. Merci.
Remercier, okay, it's my bad French. Remercier, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. Now, we'll go to UNESCO next, if that's okay. Magnus, you're going to speak on behalf of the Director General. Just to acknowledge and also thank UNESCO for the partnership. We wanted to be in Paris for the 70th anniversary. UNESCO was already on the Advisory Council. We worked together in Russia earlier this year, didn't we? So it's a partnership we already had, but thank you again for everything and to the interpreters and for hosting us today. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends. My name is Magnus Magnusson. I'm fairly new to UNESCO. I'm Director for Social and Human Science, but specifically on partnerships and outreach, and it's a pleasure to be here today and yesterday. I first want to congratulate, on behalf of UNESCO, the Institute of Human Rights and Business, and also, of course, the Center for Sports and Human Rights, and all the participants that are here. And again, welcome you to UNESCO. It's been a pleasure to host the event for the last 2 days, and I must say both panelists and interventions from the audience have had an outstanding quality, and we are indeed honored that we were able to host the debates. I think one conclusion we can draw is that significant progress has been made, and the launch of the Center for Sports and Human Rights in June is a significant step. And we would like to congratulate also Mary Harvey for your appointment. And you can please count on UNESCO for our continued support and cooperation. Maybe the most important conclusions, however, is that an enormous scope and scale of human rights challenges exist in sport. And testimonies of abuse draw a terrifying picture, but also send a message of courage and hope. And in light of the scale and scope of the challenges, it will be indispensable to prioritize measures. At UNESCO, we believe that leaving no one behind should guide us in not neglecting the most vulnerable and those at the bottom of the pyramid, where the problems are the most relevant for policymakers. So sports for all and grassroots sports, and I would say particularly a perspective on children. And we should also think about youth, and particularly those regions in the world where youth will dominate the population dividend in the next couple of years, which is Africa particularly, which is one of the priorities of UNESCO. So children and other vulnerable participants in grassroots sports do require our full attention. I think furthermore important points were made on other sports integrity issues during the discussions on the need to link good governance, inclusion, anti-corruption, and anti-discrimination, anti-doping, and match fixing to human rights. And to do this in ways that help sports organizations and other stakeholders in the integration and implementation of these principles and rights and dimensions in their work. The need to work at the national as well as international level was highlighted, and I think those are very important points. Ultimately, the need to focus on the vulnerability of athletes and sports practitioners, and most importantly, children, was emphasized. And this translates from UNESCO's perspective and our mandate into a challenge that will be at the core of our work, which will be to equip policymakers with practical guidance as we are an intergovernmental organization. The broad partnership will be key. The Center and the framework of the Kazan Action Plan are very suitable platforms for further mobilization. As a global consensus on the objectives and values that need to guide the development of sport and sport-related policies, the Kazan Action Plan is a powerful tool to affirm and activate the protection and enforcement of human rights in and through sports. The Center can and should play an international leading role in fostering the implementation of the specific human rights components of the Kazan Action Plan. These pertain to the elimination of often systematic discrimination of girls, women, and persons with disabilities who are often not allowed to participate, and the protection of vulnerable participants and stakeholders in sports. In these areas, governments require practical tools to build capacity and to measure progress. Most importantly, the case for sport and human rights still needs to be made among many of UNESCO's member states. By establishing linkages with specific SDGs and targets, the Kazan Action Plan is a powerful advocacy instrument to demonstrate the relevance of sport and human rights and the agenda linked to that within the international development and the development assistance context. So with that message, I would like to reaffirm our commitment to this agenda and to the partners. And we look forward to further cooperation with all of you on issues related to sports integrity and beyond. Thank you for coming to UNESCO, and I wish you a safe journey home, and look forward to seeing you soon again. Thank you.
And now the two Marys. Like bookends. We're going to start at this bookend. Now, Mary Harvey, it feels like you've already been part of this process. You've been to the two previous Sporting Chance forums, I remember. There were some very good candidates, and I'd like to acknowledge that, and I'd also like to acknowledge how pleased we are that you have decided to take the risk, the big step, of working with this new enterprise. Somebody like you has options, right? And you've taken this option. We are absolutely delighted, and it will be a total honour to work with you over the next year. So, Mary, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Royal Highness, Excellencies, honored guests, and friends. I'd like to start by acknowledging the work of those who preceded me. First of all, the sheer force of will that Mary Robinson has exhibited in bringing us to where we are today. And I've been acquainted with women who I've seen do incredible things through sheer force of will. And Mary, you are a sight to behold, I must say. I've never been in a position in my career, and I've been blessed to have had a remarkable career. But I've never had a position in my career where I've reported to somebody that I have so much respect for. So I want to thank you for your vision and your leadership, and for using the force of your stature and your personality to bring this to life. In addition to our passion for human rights, we've also discovered that we share a passion for protection of the environment, and we're climate warriors. So I pledge that in future, despite best efforts this time, there will be no single-use plastics at future forums. And we'll have sustainably produced food. I'd like to acknowledge the work of John Morrison. John, the work that you've done has been remarkable. I mean, the term herding cats, just incredible. What a magnificent feat you've pulled off. And with a great group around you, the staff we've already recognized, Haley, William, Guido, everybody, Allison, just incredible work that's gone into creating us and to bringing us to where we are today. I'd also like to acknowledge the work and support of the Sport and Rights Alliance. The Sport and Rights Alliance also was fundamental in helping to bring the center to life. And I know that when the United Bids Human Rights Strategy dropped into my lap, I knew where to go. I knew who to pick up the phone and call because you were there, and all of you were there. So I want to thank you again for your role in helping bring us to where we are today. The support that I have felt over the last 2 days from all of you has been humbling and overwhelming. I'm just moved and very grateful. Thank you. So with regard to closing remarks, I'd like to leave you with 3 things with regard to the future. You know, I had a different energy that I was going to bring into this, which was a lot more enthusiasm and let's go get this. And then we had the last panel. You're welcome, Minky. But you know, I'm a former player. I'm a former international football player, and I'm not someone who's given to angering easily. But when I heard what I just heard, I'm angry. Current structures in sport for grievance and remedy aren't sufficient. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. They're not sufficient. They don't address risks to children. They don't address risks to sexual harassment and assault. They don't address the aggrieved who are outside of unions. And I think the unions are wonderful and terrific and important. But the vast majority of players don't have the benefit of representation by a union. And there are more people who are at risk besides that. Referees. If you think that players have it difficult, referees have it worse. So referees and other people who are involved in sport are also very vulnerable to the same sort of power dynamic that creates the abuses that we're talking about. So the center's work is going to look at how credible and effective mechanisms to address these critical gaps can be effective. So those of you who have had your human rights violated by sport, we've got your back. Collective action versus collective value. So we hear what has been created is a collective sense of purpose and voice. But now moving forward, it's moving that into value, and it's a two-part contract. What value are we going to come to you with and ask of you to assist in helping us bring the center and its work to life? And secondly, as members, a year from now, what value do you feel the center has provided to you is also very germane. So that's also very important. And finally, walking the walk. And I'm typically a person given to more action than words. But we're at a point where this movement has been mobilized, and it's important now to bring this great work to life in terms of action. And I'm going to talk just briefly about something that I learned when I worked at FIFA. And that was to bring these things to life at this point. We're bringing about big change. And there's been change that's happened already, but big change. And in a life where I was a management consultant, we talk a lot about change management. And when you get to a point where you are taking the work that you've done and it informs understanding of these issues, which informs policies, which informs bidding requirements, which informs how you do things going forward. That's wonderful. But the next work is how do you disseminate it down into continental organizations, into countries, that vertical integration. And that is where you get out of your office and you go to where people are and you talk with them and you take them through the process. And you lead them through it, take them by the hand, and when you talk about human rights and you get a blank face, you say, this is what we mean by that. This is what we're talking about. Do you have a homeless problem in your city? What's your, when we were working on the United Bid, those are the sorts of things that we talked about. How do you unpack human rights into something that sports organizations can understand? When you talk about the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, what does it mean? In practical terms, in plain English, French, Spanish, whatever, what's it mean? So we are now poised to put all of this great work into action. And to do that, it will be an opportunity to work with all of you to bring the change management piece of our work to life. So with that, I'd like to say I'm so grateful. I'm your servant. I'm a leader who is in service to and of the movement. And I look forward very much to getting to know all of you more and to, with the staff, putting in place an action plan for change moving forward. Thank you very much.
My God, it's good to have you around. Holiday starts next week. Mary, the other Mary, the original Mary, final word. You close us.
Yes, okay. Well, let me just start by saying, and I really mean this, I have been significantly overpraised too much in this forum, and I am so delighted that from now on there will be a spotlight on the other Mary, Mary H, and I will just be the elder who from time to time will prod and push in my role as chair, but it will really be Mary H who will hopefully get a lot of the limelight and a lot of but I too would like to acknowledge the extraordinary team of John and the IHRB generally. They really have been a great support in the fact that we've seen such progress from the first Sporting Chance Forum in Washington, then last year in Geneva, and now here in UNESCO in Paris. And I too would like to acknowledge and thank UNESCO for their support. But I want to be brief and I want to be focused, so I'll begin with Niels. As you anticipated, John, I do agree. I do agree wholeheartedly. And I'm going to prove that I agree because I'm going to repeat you. First of all, you're right that sport is very significantly about children and young people, and we have not had them enough represented in this, and we have to do better in the future. I loved the fact that as a young person, you referenced climate change and sport in development and peace. These are the issues that young people really care about, and I think we need to hear more in this in the Centre for Sport and Human Rights. You talked rightly about the leverage, the potential of being able to do more because we do it in a smart way. You talked about empowerment very, very eloquently. I do think we need to think about young people being represented on the Advisory Council, and tomorrow I'll hope to make a suggestion or two to the Advisory Council along those lines. So yes, I very much agree with the points that you made. And I think it is really important that this year's forum agenda was framed around perspectives and voices of different affected groups. They were very, very moving. I think on each panel there was someone who touched in a particular way. It wasn't just listening to panel members. There was that extra. But I thought the panel before lunch yesterday, I think moved us pretty well all to tears. I certainly felt the tears coming, and I think many of us did. And the last panel that Minky moderated in her usual style by overrunning significantly, but she did point out to me that we had the Afghan women's team representatives, and I want to pay a particular tribute to them. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Imagine being able to say, as young playing women, we are challenging the system, and know that it's true, that the president of the Afghan Football Federation is now suspended because you have spoken out, because you had the courage to do it, because you are doing it now, not later, and in retrospect and having suffered and you're doing it angrily. I heard the anger, and you're right. And Mary Harvey is right to feel that anger in listening to you. And we will not tolerate that in the future. We have to do more. And I think that's extremely important. So we need to think about how the focus that we've had on affected groups can best translate into the Centre's work going forward as well as the future of our Sporting Chance Forum. I believe that this coalition has proved that we could set an ambitious agenda and deliver on it. We now have our CEO in place, Mary Harvey, to acclamation. We have a growing advisory council, which will have youth representation, don't worry, Niels, and that will help to shape the work. And we have leverage. We know now that we can have impact, and we have to learn to use this in a very clever and balanced way. We need to set ourselves targets for wins next year to demonstrate that we can make a difference. That is important, that we show. We have shown already that we've made a difference, but we have to go on doing that, beyond the important work of dialogue and sharing our experience. And this isn't easy. Collective action, in fact, has to be built on trust. I think we have that trust, but we have to earn it each time. And part of setting those targets will involve getting balance right between a focus on big events and the broader sport and human rights agenda. It also means making some choices about geographical priorities and aligning with other key events. I agree with the Ambassador that we need to think more about broadening our geographic spread and reach, because that's where the majority world is. That's where the majority of young people who need to know there's a centre for sport and human rights are. And so I'm even thinking about the fact that we've had the first Sporting Chance Forum in Washington, America. We've had 2 in Europe, Geneva and Paris. Could we maybe think, this is off the top of my head, Tokyo? I mean, there's going to be both football and Olympics in short succession in Tokyo. It seems to me that we should maybe think about it. And then we should think, when and how are we going to have a good Sporting Chance Forum in Africa? That's important as well. So, thinking. And I suppose my last thought really is just the words a new global architecture and how it has been created. That it has been a consultation bottom-up, a steering committee on megasports and human rights that even this time last year wasn't quite sure if it could reach to be able to create an independent centre for sport and human rights. Nobody doubts that now. I mean, there hasn't been a single question about the fact that we have this centre for sport and human rights. So that means we can think big, we must think big. We must be balanced, but always moving in the direction of how are we serving those whose human rights need protection? How are we meaningful to those who need our support and help? How are we addressing power and tackling a power imbalance that clearly is there in sport? We've heard it a lot in the thing. These are the challenges that we will face. Tomorrow at the Advisory Council, I'm going to enjoy, making sure that the Advisory Council is alert to all these things on all of our behalf. And I'll end with that. Thank you.
That's it, guys. Advisory Council, 7 o'clock upstairs, but the rest of you are free to leave. But it's like Hotel California. You don't really leave. So we'll be back in touch. Thank you very much.